Hey, homeschool math help. Here is a hack for you in helping your kids with their math as a homeschooler. And there are 3 P words to help you remember this. The first one is paper, the second one is pen, the third one is phrase. By the end of this short little video, you'll see one of my favorite math hacks and have a plan to help your kids, especially if they struggle with keeping their math neat and showing their work. So the first P of homeschool math hack or homeschool math help is to be very purposeful in the paper that you choose to have your kids work with. My favorite paper is graph paper, and don't underestimate the power of what I'm about to tell you. There's graph paper with all different size boxes. You can get graph paper that has big boxes on them, or as like these paper have smaller squares on one side and larger squares on the other. And so it depends on how many boxes are in an inch. That's kind of how you figure out your math graph paper. But I learned this hack with graph paper when I was helping in a 3rd grade classroom. And the math teacher had me create math papers that looked like this. So I took a pen. I'm going to use a black pen. Is it black? Is it red? I'm going to use red so that you can see it. She had me use a black pen. I'm using red so that you can see it. And divide the paper in half one way, and then create it into these grids, simple, just like this. She had me grid the math. And then she had me write the problems down on the graph paper. And I'm going to write one down. I'm going to make a problem up right now. 123 times 47. And I'm going to show you what she showed me to do. So she showed me to take a section of the graph paper and to write the problem with one number in each box. And I sat there and I said, shouldn't the kids write these problems down themselves? And she said, Bekki, doing math is one skill, but transferring a math problem from a workbook or a textbook onto a piece of paper or a board without making a mistake is actually a higher learning skill. And so at the time when I was helping in that 3rd grade classroom, she said, what we're trying to have the kids do is to do their math accurately. When they get older and they develop those higher skill levels, then they'll be able to concentrate on transferring their problems from the book to the paper. So number 1, you take a piece of graph paper and you divide it into 8 sections. And then you have the kids solve only one problem in each of these grids. You may have a child like one of my sons. He was burdened and grieved by the fact that he was wasting paper because there was so much white space on the paper when he was done. Over and over and over, I said, dude, I love your heart, but when you're doing math, the focus is neatness and accuracy, not saving trees. So understand, for these exercises, we're not worrying about wasting space on paper. It's important that you learn to line up your math problems well and give your eyes enough white space so that your brain can make sense of what it's seeing. So don't try to save trees when you're doing math. Teach your kids that they need to have an appropriate amount of white space around them. The reason that graph paper is so great is that you can, depending on the size of the box, you require that only one number can go in each of the little box grids. That's so important. Another one of my 5 sons loved to see how small he could write. Now, these things on top of my head are reading glasses. I wear reading glasses because he can't see teeny tiny things, and he delighted in making his numbers so small that I'd have to get out a magnifying glass. Like, dude, no, we're going to use graph paper and you're going to fill up the box and make your numbers appropriately. So in this whole thing of homeschool math help, the very first thing is to invest in some graph paper. It's more expensive than lined paper. It is. The bigger boxes are more expensive than the smaller college level graph paper, but it's worth the price because it helps the kids keep their math neat. And it's so important that when we are doing something fine like mathematics, that we take the time to do it neatly. So the first P was for paper. The second P was for pen. And I want you to notice whose pen or whose hand this pen is in. If your kids struggle doing their math neatly, then pick up the pen and write the problems on the paper for them, and they just work the problems out. Understand the reality that copying those problems and transferring them from one page to the other is a higher level of learning. It's a higher skill. And most math mistakes are basic mistakes. Oh, I meant to write a 3, not a 6. Oh, 2 plus 2 isn't 5, it's 4. Those simple basic math mistakes. And so especially when the kids are developing those foundational math skills, take some of the stumbling blocks away by giving them great paper to work with and writing down problems for them so that they're just going through the process of actually solving the arithmetic rather than carefully copying the problem onto their page, carefully making the numbers and solving the problems. You're just eliminating some of those early stumbling blocks while they develop things like spatial awareness, the understanding that great math sometimes takes a lot of space and needs white space around it. Otherwise, it's impossible to decipher and easy to get lost, especially when they start to get into the land of things like long division. Boy, do you need things straight, and boy, do you need white space, so that when you make a mistake, because you will, you can easily find, oh, it's right there. That's where I made the mistake. So that's important. So the first P, paper, invest in graph paper. Number 2, pen. You be the secretary for your kids when they're younger so that they can concentrate on the work of solving the problem. And then once they get that skill down, then they can concentrate on the skill of transferring the problems to another piece of paper. The last P is the phrase. When your kids are doing math, they will likely use what everybody else calls scratch paper. The term scratch paper is when you have a piece of paper and you're just scribbling out your stuff, right? You're just scribbling out how you solve a problem. You're doing this problem and you're trying to remember what 16 times 9 is, so you do that on scratch paper. Change that phrase. Instead of calling it scratch paper, call it show your work neatly paper. A simple change of that phrase programs your kids to know, hey, even when I'm just solving something off on the side, my work needs to be neat because it will help eliminate math error, those simple math errors. So graph paper, be the secretary. Don't call it scratch paper, call it something magic like show your work neatly paper. And that's it. So that's a basic homeschool math help that has made all the difference in the world for all 5 of my sons, and that I witnessed help other kids in classrooms just around when I was teaching in classrooms. So before you go, down in the descriptions, you will find a link to my math roadmap. It will be there after this video posts, but it is an overarching glimpse at the types of things that your kids should learn before they graduate high school. So make sure you get a copy of that. And other than that, go forth, find some graph paper, become a professional secretary for as long as it is necessary to help your kids thrive in math. Some kids won't need you for very long. Some kids will need you. One of my kids needed me to help him keep his stuff neat almost until high school because he grew so fast. His fine motor skills weren't developed until he was almost in 9th grade. And so the process of moving his paper problems to paper and then working them out, he could do it, but it took him so much extra time that I wanted him to succeed, and succeed meant solve the problem properly. So anyway, yeah, those are my tips for you today. Paper, pen, phrase, and grab your math roadmap. Let me know if you have any math hacks or tips that can help other homeschoolers, and I can add those into a future video. So go forth and solve math and help make it fun for your kids. Have a wonderful day.